Hi Jackie, it's Fancy, and I'm going to make you a little video that will hopefully clear up your questions. If not, we can talk about it, of course. All right, so I've launched Illustrator, but I haven't opened a new file. So I see my menu bar across the top. I just don't see a new file here yet, so I can do a couple of things. I can go to File, New, or Command N, and I want to choose Print because I want this to say PPI 300. It's going to say color mode CMYK PPI 300. Now I could go back up here and I could choose for web, or I could choose basic RGB. And look what that does to my PPI, 72. I don't want that. I want 300 because 300 will print out much nicer. So I'm going to go back to print. And I'll change this part later. I'll show you where to do that. So also I want inches. And I want to change this to 7 by 9, and I'm just tabbing through these fields. So just save some time from clicking. So 7 by 9, PPI 300, CMYK. Okay, so at this point I can go up to File and I can say Color Mode, RGB. Next, this may be collapsed, so this is all that you might see. You want to make your color. So I'm going to open up my swatches. I'm going to tear it off of there so it's floating. Collapse that. Tear this off too. In fact, I can just recombine them. See how that turns blue? Now I can drag them around together. And I'm going to do that. All right. We're just looking at colors. So the first thing I want to do is set my stroke to none. So I have to tap on it to bring it to the front, and I change it. And then I'm going to tap on my fill color to bring that back to the front. So my stroke is 0 or none, and I just have white. Because I have made this into a CMYK document, when I pull up the color floating palette, the sliders say CMYK. So I can make my magenta. I think that's what you said you wanted to use, simply by making it 100% and leaving the C, the Y, and the K to 0. I'm going to expand my palette, and I'm going to pull this down here for now, just to save it. I could also make a new color group. I'm going to call it achromatic, monochromatic, and my magenta's in there. Now I need to make my tints and shades. So I have 100% magenta. I double click on this. This is the color picker. And we see that we have CMYK. Now it's interesting, if I look at here, it says 0 for the C, 0 for the Y, and 0 for the K. Here it says 1%, 1%. Honestly, I don't know why it does that. I could go in there and put 0 and 0, not 10, but 0. And now it says, oh, magenta. Okay, so for whatever reason, it's sliding back and forth. So now this over here matches this over here. And so some other things that I see over here. I also see these other color models. This is hue, saturation, brightness, and here's our RGB. So we have our 100% cyan sitting at 323. We have our saturation at 100% and our brightness at 100%. And see how it makes it change. So it's not going to be perfect. So you're probably wondering what these are here. So what is hue, saturation, and brightness? If we go back over here to our options, oops, we have to cancel out our color picker. we can see we also have HSB. And what that is your hue. I'm just going to round it up to, or round it down. Excuse me. Little cough this morning. So if we look at the saturation, we see white on this end and 100% magenta on this side. That means there's no white mixed into this color. If we drag this down, we mix white with our pure magenta. If we look at brightness, we see black at this end and pure magenta at this end. Sorry. We have it set at 100%, so that means there's no black. It's just pure magenta or pure 324 color. 324. This is like a giant color wheel. Color wheel has 360 degrees. This color is located at 324. We want to make sure that stays consistent or within a very consistent range. If it jumps from 323, 324, 325, even 326 or 322, it will probably display just fine on your screen. But if possible, if we could keep it to 324. So you could also mix colors that way. So if you wanted to mix tints, then you could start by dragging this around to change the color. You want to make sure the black, so hue, saturation, and brightness, you could think of this as black. You want to make sure the black is not in there and that it stays 100% while you're dragging this slider around. Now if we want to create shades, we want to make sure that the saturation is at 100%. This always stays the same. And we drag this around to change the amount of black in there. That's another way you could do it. So I'm just going to drag these back to 100%. Drag this back to 324, 325. And I'm going to do my color picker. This is what we saw in class. So if you want to mix your tints, so the colors with white, you want to make sure that your color picker stays along the top edge. If you want to mix your shades, you want to make sure your color picker stays along the vertical right edge. And so then you can see these values. Here's our HSB here. Here's our CMYK. Here's our RGB. We can see all of these. These are a hexadecimal, which you don't have to worry about. All right, so I could also mix my colors this way. So I could do it by, moving and clicking along this edge. Now what you want to do is make sure that that actually stays along the edge, because as it moves into here, you're mixing both black and white, and you don't want that. So make sure you kind of have that half moon shape, and it's staying along the edge. Now as you drag this up and down, you'll see your HSB values changing. And you see as you stay along that edge that always stays 100%, so you know you're not mixing white in there. You're just, remember B is for brightness, but we can also think of it as black. So you're just mixing different percentages of black, and this is always staying the same, 323. Right? So you see how the S stays the same, and only the black changes percentages. Okay, so let's try that along the top edge, and you can see that your color is changing here. Here's your pure magenta, here's the shade that you're mixing. Now let's drag our color picker along the top edge. Okay, now we see our black stays at 100%, means no black in the color, and only our S, our saturation, which is also white, changes. And our hue stays at 323. Okay, so I hope that helps. Now once you, say, make a tint, which I'm doing now, or I make a shade, it will kind of pop around, so that's okay. Say I like this tint, say okay. it shows up in my fill box. I can drag it over. Oops. Hold on. I can add it here. I can't believe that I. Oh, okay. I can make a new swatch. There we go. Sorry. I can put it into my palette. So once I make my color, I see it here. After I click out on my color picker, I click here. And then if I see it here, I see it here. I should be able to drag it down like this, or I can have it highlighted and say new swatch. If this comes up, I see the color that I want. And I can also change it here. Look at all these options I have. Black is at 100%, meaning no black. I've got about 50% of white mixed in there. And here it's shifted a little. I could put 323 back in there and say OK. And it adds it to my color group. So I hope that helps. Let me know.